All right, so what we want to do now is start to gray box out the elements that are outside of this. So I'm just pressing the left and right key on my on my keyboard to sort of pan through this and just sort of look at things like this, these trees, these little garden elements. But I think what we're going to be using mostly is this view here and that first one we were looking at. Um, what I want to do is I want us to think about kind of just how we would best match this. Now you might be noticing as you're modeling this that there's stairs in one view, but they're not in this view because sometimes these houses have subtle modifications and that's okay. So let's talk about a new technique called subdivision modeling, which is actually one of my favorite techniques. So I'm just going to go to create polygon primitives cube, and I'm going to hold shift and drag this out. Now the difference between just clicking it is I have interactive creation on, and if you create something with interactive creation, you have to drag out the base first. So let's do that. And I'm going to select my cube. You drag your base out. Oh, actually, it looks like we just kept creating those. Let's undo that. Sorry, if you have it on, you have to drag out the base and then drag up, which you might already know. But when you're in that mode, if you want to just kind of create a cube and adjust the size, if you hold the shift key down and left click, you can create a cube that way. All right, so subdivision modeling really has to do with the number one or the numbers one, two, and three on your keyboard. One, we see it in regular view. Two, we see it as a subdivision mode, which is a smoothed out version with a cage around it. The cage is actually the shape of the cube. It's showing us that. And three is just the subdivision object. I like to be in the second mode where we have the cage with the subdivision object. So let's go ahead and construct this tree. I'm going to right click, go to face mode, select this top face, and hold the shift key down to extrude this up. Hold shift again, and you can see I'm just creating what appears to be like a hot dog shaped cylinder. Now from this front view, you can see it's kind of tilted in, so I'm going to, let's make sure that we turn off. Here, I'm going to hit Control Spacebar to get out of expert mode. Looks like I had symmetry on, so I'm going to hold shift and just kind of tilt that in a little bit. Shift again, pull that to the right. So I'm creating that little curve. And then I'm going to bring this up a little bit more. And then where this, we have the branch here, I'm going to actually extrude 3 times. So shift once and shift twice. Now the reason for that is I want these faces here to have these vertices. Now if I go to face mode and I select both of these faces on the side, now there's a couple different options that I can use. If I hold shift and right click, I can go to circularize components, and that'll make the face into this kind of diamond or circular shape. I'm going to hit E to rotate that, straighten that out again. Now what's nice about that is when I go to extrude that by holding shift, notice it gave me a cylindrical shape without adding any more geometry. So I'm going to hit R, scale that down a bunch, bring that a little bit closer to the side here because I want to create the thinner branch. And I'm going to hold shift, drag this up, shift again. Just kind of doing something like this. And then let's go ahead and do this too. I'm going to hold shift, drag this up, shift again. Now I would be okay with, if we're posing our scene, if you had just something like this. You don't have to have every one of these branches in place because I'd like you to practice using this technique by creating different trees all over the place. Because the goal of this assignment is that we would gray box out the ground plane, this part where the concrete is, and these chairs. So I'm going to show you how to construct those chairs now. Well, once after I finish this. So notice at the base here, we have these little branches that come off the bottom. So what I'm going to do is right click, go to edge mode, and then I'm going to hold shift and right click, or I'm sorry, control and right click rather. Let's see, are we in edge mode? Yeah. Sorry, shift and right click is correct. And go down to insert edge loop. And I want to just sort of insert one loop here in the center. And then with these faces selected, I'm going to hold shift, scale these down, bring them down to the ground, and then extrude that in, and then just kind of push that down. Let's do that again. And we could use the circularize component. It's up to you. With these guys, because they're going to be so hidden, it's not necessary, but I wanted to show you that you could use that if you wanted to. And then I'm going to just do one more here. Scale that in a bunch. holding shift, and then bring this in. Now what I'd like to do is show you, just kind of create the segmented area for the ground plane. So going back to object mode, I'm going to go to create polygon primitive and just add a plane across this whole surface. And then I'm going to take this object and sort of push it into the ground. Sort of place it here like that. I'm going to duplicate this guy here, rotate him a little bit, and then we're going to edit the leaning of this guy. So something like this. Maybe hit E, rotate this a little bit. So I'm really looking for you to train your eye. So we're looking to get a bunch of these trees, and then let's take a look at how we can model, these chairs here. So there's a couple ways of doing this. You'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pieces or boards that make up this top part. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitive, cube, drag this up. I'm going to scale that in just a little bit. And I'm going to hold shift and copy that. And actually, let's do it this way so it's a little more exact. I'm going to do edit, duplicate, special. Now I want to get those 5 other copies, and we're going to go 1 here. Now for the translation, I guess what we can do is, let's see, let's make sure they're copies, and we want to move it across our x-axis. Let's try 0.5 and hit apply and see what happens. That's a little too big, so let's undo that. Let's try 0.2, and I'm going to press 1 in here to exit that. Not too bad. So let's try one more. Let's try 0.25, and then I'm going to hit apply, and that looks pretty good. We're still going to edit this, and I'm going to hit close. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine all of these. So I'm going to right click, combine, or shift right click and go to combine. You can also go up here to mesh combine. Now I want to introduce you to a new tool, so our deformer here, and it's just called the Lattice tool. Now what the Lattice tool does is it provides us with this lattice graph that we can use to control or the structure of our object. So let's go ahead and add, let's say 3 of these, I guess, would be a good or safe. So I'm just going to type 3 for the vertical. Let's do 5 actually. And then for these, we're going to just make these 2. All right, so with that selected, right, if we click on that, you want to make sure that lattice thing is selected, right, not the mesh. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to lattice point. Now watch what happens as I pull this up. Notice we get a way of creating a really nice curve like we have there. And with these selected down here, I'm going to hit R and scale that in like that. So you can see there. Now, in order to get this to lock in, because if we select this and I go to move it, notice it screws up. We're going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, and we're going to hit History to clean that out. And now it locked in that shape. So I'm going to hit R to scale that down. And notice in our reference here, we have a bunch of things going on here. We've got like we have this chair here, which has a flat area, kind of like a box, and we have a box that goes up and then comes down, and it's just a bunch of cubes. So what I'm going to do is just lean this back, and then go to Create Polygon Primitive Cube. Drag out another board that represents this chair. So something like this. And I'm just going to duplicate that a bunch of times. And then I'm going to select all three of these, hit E. Let's actually combine these. All right, so we're going to go ahead and rotate these up like this. I'm going to hold Shift, duplicate these, hit E, and just kind of rotate them down. Now, if I want the axis to follow along with that, I can hold W down and left click, and I can do Object, and now I can move these like that. I can hit R and scale it in that way too. So notice these are just simple primitives, but as we continue to model this out, it helps to just sort of, we're just training our eyes to see the spatial relationships, right? They're just simple cubes, but when you put them together, we end up with something like this, you know? All right, let's create a board here and another board there, and let's start to just position this towards the floor. So I'm going to shift right click and then combine this and then move it down to the floor a little bit like that. And really we only have to create one of these chairs, and then so let's do mesh or create polygon primitive cube, drag this out here, put another one here. Let's add the board going on the bottom here. I'm going to right click, go to vertex mode, pull these up. And what I can do actually is right click, go to face mode, hold shift, extrude this out and bring this down. And you can see basic primitives, holding shift to copy that. Just all these basic primitives. We know we're trying to get this shape here. So let's do that one, create polygon primitive cube. Bring these in. I'm going to right click on this, go to edge mode, and then shift right click, insert edge loop tool. Now remember, if you go up to edit mesh or mesh tools rather, you have your is it mesh? I go up here so irregularly that I sometimes forget. Oh, it is mesh tools. So mesh tools, insert edge loop. So you can select it there too. And I'm just going to add a cut going this way. And then right click, vertex mode, highlight these. Let's try that again. Right click, vertex mode. Just kind of bring that in and then hit R to scale that in. So something like this. Edit, duplicate special. Let's bring this back down to 0. And then we want this to be -1. Across the x-axis, I'm going to hit apply. And then let's move this guy over here. Looks like I had 5 on too. All right, let's do another set. I believe there's a set back here. And then there is let's do our modify center pivot here. Holding shift, I'm going to duplicate this, bring it down. Actually, it looks like it's facing the other way. Create the other leg here. I'm actually going to scale this out just a tad bit, bring this in a bunch so that these guys can sit inside of here. Let's duplicate this over. Let's move these over too. And overall, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Shift, select all these different components, and then go to Mesh and Combine up here. Now I want to clean this up, so I'm going to do Edit, Delete by Type, History. And notice in our reference here we have this regular chair, and then we have this one. So I'm just going to, and they're positioned pretty in the foreground of that tree. Ooh, let's delete this. And we can actually hide. So I'm going to hold this, I'm going to hold Shift to duplicate that, and then E to rotate. So something like that. And then for this chair here, which is really just this without that front piece, I'll duplicate this again and right click, go to face mode, and then just double click these and delete them. These can be moved back, maybe scaled up a little bit. And then for these faces, I'm going to delete them, but you'll notice now we have holes. So if we go to edge mode and we double click this edge, we can right click or shift right click and do bridge, and it'll fill that hole for us. Or we can use fill hole. And it looks like it needs a little bit of tweaking. Actually, it doesn't even need these pieces. So let's go to face mode, double click these guys, delete them. And let's bring these guys back here. And let's select these two faces here, and then move those back as well. So there we have it. We have our three chairs. So what I'm going to go ahead and save this. So for me, what I would like is if you could, by next class, have these three chairs, and the trees sort of just subdivisioned, modeled out around it. So we have 1, 2, 3. Let's zoom out a little bit. And this will all be in the assignment description. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees, one back here, right? And so we put a tree back here. So the 6 trees and 3 chairs in the foreground. You could have that modeled out. That would be fantastic.